Hey everyone, welcome to another G News update. This morning we heard from the next Prime Minister, Chris Hipkins, how it probably really wasn't the fault of Christopher Luxon that he slept through that meeting of the coalition of the willing, because basically Christopher Luxon wasn't considered important enough to actually be invited to attend. I mean, who cares what Christopher Luxon has to say? And as you saw yesterday, there was a changing story really in the New Zealand Herald about really why Christopher Luxon couldn't be bothered. The New Zealand Herald went back in time and said, well, look, Christopher Luxon had gone on public record to say he only needs 2.5 hours sleep, and often he's actually awake by 1 a.m. But that story changed over time too, with about a year passing by and Christopher Luxon suddenly needing 4 hours sleep and him getting up at 4 a.m. in the morning instead of 1 a.m. And now it turns out that after Christopher Luxon appeared at the press conference and said, well, look, he had some morning interviews that he needed to attend, he needed that sleep, and it was more important than the Ukraine war or New Zealand's contribution. It turns out, according to Christopher Hipkins' version, that basically Luxon wasn't even invited to attend that. But the story goes that some New Zealand officials did what Luxon wouldn't do. So it's pretty slack. Either way, Christopher Luxon hasn't been honest. Either he wasn't important enough or he just couldn't be bothered going, and didn't quite tell us the truth about whether he sleeps till 1 a.m. or 4 a.m. Anyway, it looked pretty shonky to me. The big stories in the news this morning concern things like over at Radio New Zealand, the way in which the Climate Commission says that this government has hollowed out all of the policy framework that we need to achieve our climate emissions over the next years leading up to 2015. At the moment, they're saying you're not going to make it. And the government's kind of saying, oh, well, look, we probably will make it. But they've basically cancelled so many initiatives for reducing climate emissions. Kirsty Johnson has done some research and produced a big groundbreaking story this morning that shows dozens and dozens of initiatives have been cancelled by this petroleum and fossil fuel focused government. So all that good work done by Dame Jacinda, caring about the world and the future generations, had been hollowed out and pulled backwards by this terrible, donor-focused fossil fuel-based government. So basically, that was one of the big stories breaking at Radio New Zealand, and of course there'd be no coverage of this kind of truth-telling over at Stephen Joyce's New Zealand Herald or over at News Talk ZB, who don't really like to get stuck in, if there's money, at stake. But basically, Christopher Hipkins was on Radio New Zealand this morning, and the topic of storage and what we do about it in future, storing electricity, came up. And he basically said that he thinks the position that we should take is a distributed storage network across New Zealand, and also deal with peak electricity and that market and do something about the energy sector. So far, the government's been sitting on its hands, doing nothing, but apparently they're talking away about this in the background. So Chris Hipkins is looking more and more like a Prime Minister all the time. He's being bipartisan. He's doing what's good for the country. He's not doing what that tiny sphincter mouse Chris Bishop did when he came in and just ripped everything out for his ideological small government neoliberal mates at the expense of everything. Continuity was just thrown out by Chris Bishop. But Chris Hipkins is sort of caring more about the country, and he's saying, well, look, we'll just wait and see what the government does about peak energy and the peak energy sector. And we've got some policies and ideas and things, but we'll just see whether the government goes far enough. So that was kind of good and comforting to see for all people that voted for National. You can come over and vote for Labour now, do the right thing by the country, stop voting for these white boys and this terrible one-term government. Other stories in the news this morning, well, over on the New Zealand Herald, finally, Judith Collins has been forced to apologise because she put everyone in crook and she was wrong and factually incorrect when she was making out that teachers could be earning 140 grand or 147 grand, and she allowed that fake news to continue for 24 hours, and it got to the point where Judith Collins, and her incompetence or her dishonesty, take a pick, was so bad that the Prime Minister faced the post-cabinet press conference and wasn't able to address the numbers, didn't know anything, completely a fish out of water, uninformed, useless, basically a lazy Prime Minister sleeping on the job, and he wasn't able to say what the numbers really were. But all over the country, teachers were outraged, and over social media there were all sorts of posts saying, well, look, I've been a teacher for 10 years. I know that I'm only on 103,000, not 147. And the Prime Minister, Christopher Luxon, he's kind of like, well, I don't know the numbers. I don't have any idea. I'm bloody useless. I haven't looked into things. I've been working incredibly hard on just sleeping, really, and not being invited and making up stories. So basically, Judith Collins probably got slapped across the ears. I mean, she'd recently lost a satellite as the Minister of Space. So, she wasn't going to tell the truth about these numbers. And the whole idea, really, that all these teachers were on 147,000 was just an outrage. Basically, she had to say, look, I'm very, very sorry, but I've misled you all and told you fibs again. This is Mrs. Oravida. This is dirty politics. This is fake news. And you just can't trust anything that comes out of these people's mouths. So basically, the big apology was there, and it was all over the New Zealand Herald, as Judith Collins had to admit she'd put you all crook, and there it was. The Prime Minister had no idea. So that was another one of those big stories this morning. In other news, there's this kind of like pink. There's a bit of a wash-up afterwards. Earlier on TVNZ Breakfast, we saw John Gray, who is the president of the Homeowners and Business Home Buyers Association of New Zealand, Hobbins. He's a former long-term, long-haul captain flying Boeing aircraft at Air New Zealand, so he's not going to put you a crook, is he? And he was just saying, well, look, there was just no real need in terms of speeding things up anyway, for us to make these changes at all. And so it's very dubious. And this was my observation too, that the vast majority of building consents go through in less than 20 days. And John Gray was saying, well, look, we had one that just passed by, in 8 days, because the people that do the design were forced to actually get their numbers right and put their application in properly. So if these people that are building houses and designing houses actually did their job properly, then consents would go through quickly, and most of them do, 95% of them pretty quick. So for the government to kind of make out that there's these big time lags is just incorrect, and it's a very small saving, at the margins. We're talking like very, very tiny cost savings. So the government will mislead you, just like Judith Collins, and tell you some cool story that isn't true. And really, it's up to the media to then go through what has been said and actually hold them to account. But as you know, we recently, under this government, the whole stringency and accountability under OIAs is being slackened and loosened, so that the mechanisms that we as a people have to hold these people in government to account are weakened further and further, and more dodgy, crooked things can be gotten away with, like, for example, pandering to the petro industries and the fossil fuel big donors, and not being accountable. This is the kind of thing we're seeing on fishing trawlers now. The public gets shut out and isn't allowed to see what's going on as they overfish and destroy our fish stocks, with Shane Jones rubbing his hands in glee with all of his crony mates. So there was more stories along these kind of lines as well. What actually happened, boy, I just suddenly had a blank. But the wharf behind me is where the ferries come in, and over on Waiheke Island, there's always been a bit of an outrage really about the cost of people coming here, and how we have the highest ferry prices in the world on Waiheke Island. So if you want to come over here and spend some money up in a restaurant or at a retail shop, you've already been caned by the people who are running a private business at Fuller's, and they're trying to sell it now. But also, if you trying to buy food at the supermarket, you've got these kind of in-between people that are delivering the freight. And they're ripping off the other distributors here. They're gouging, their pricing is gouging, just like the electricity people, you know. So you privatize stuff and prices go up for all of us. So this is the kind of model that we're seeing. We're starting with the local body elections now, and you had Wayne Brown talking about a 2.5% bed tax. This came up again for Chris Hipkins this morning in the news. He was asked by Corin Dan on Radio New Zealand Morning Report whether he agreed with the idea of a 2.5% bed tax for people who come to New Zealand. And Chris Hipkins was largely supportive and open to this idea, because places like Auckland, where we're trying to get build our tourism infrastructure, it needs some kind of funding. And the same goes for Queenstown down south. So he's very open. The next government, the Labour-led government, will look at this and help Aucklanders and help people in Queenstown. So hold on and just vote for a Labour-led government. The government itself has been raising taxes now and just refusing to call them taxes, calling them levies. So Chris Hipkins pointed out possibly about 4 or 5 different areas, like, you know, when it comes to visitors coming to New Zealand, they'd ratchet it up and called it a levy when it's a tax. When you know, it came to your car and getting that all registered and everything, they'd taxed you more. So they tax more, but they don't call it that because they like to use those slogans. Another piece of news this morning was Winston and will he sell us all out? This came up on TVNZ Breakfast, New Zealand Last. Will they sell us out because the price is right? Well, Winston had long been on record as far back as 2014 saying there's no way I will ever basically sell you all out to foreign buyers, and New Zealand homes are Kiwi homes and Kiwi homes should be lived in Kiwis, not just sold off to the highest bidder because the price is right. But now apparently, according to the rumours around town, Winston's going to sell us all out, and he's going to say, look, if the price is right, you can sell out all these Kiwi homes and they may not even be lived in by anybody, as we see homelessness explode. Last night on TVNZ One News, New Zealanders were shocked out of their brains when they saw that the amount of grants that had been paid to youth when they apply for emergency homes, because it's an emergency and they're going to have to live on the street or in the park in the freezing cold weather, possibly risk their lives even. Well, the government has actually just made it so hard and impossible that the Salvation Army and the Auckland City Mission are saying this is a major contributing factor to the homelessness, and the youth are on the streets while we're in homes, you know, and we're warm, but we're paying huge power bills. People are freezing cold outside, and they're just children, our children, while the government says, no, it's not a contributing factor. We're not listening to you. It couldn't possibly be the cause. There's a range of factors, and we're not going to listen, and we're just going to keep it the same, and those kids can freeze because we're a cruel, heartless bunch of... I'll just blink that out. So, yeah, so that's the government we've got. It's cruel and it's heartless, and it tells us lies, and it's only when it's called out that it tells the truth. And just finally, regarding teachers, Chris Hipkins made a very strong point this morning that if Christopher Luxon and Judith Collins and all the rest of these people in government wanted to avoid strike action, then maybe they should pay people, you know, at least the rate of inflation, instead of giving them year after year of real terms pay cuts and saying, oh, look, if you add up 1% over 3 years, it's a 3% pay increase, and avoiding talking about inflation altogether. That's just deceitful. It's half the story. It's a half truth and a half lie. And it should be called out by Audrey Young, and it should be called out by Fran O'Sullivan, and it should be called out strongly by Mike Hosking, because Mike always is right, and he always tells the truth, and so does Heather Duplessis Allen, don't they? So these people, where are they? Are they missing in action? Are they telling the truth, or are they just partisan hacks working in a propaganda organisation chaired by Stephen Joyce and propped up by a Canadian billionaire that's kind of so far right? He's slightly right of Attila the Hun, and arguing that he wants some kind of balance out there somewhere that way, on the right, way over that. So these are the kind of issues that are confronting us. We've got homelessness exploding, we've got unemployment climbing up, we've got a problem in the housing market. We don't want to just inflate that into a big bubble again, because that's not sustainable, it's not productive. We've got Davey Boy trying to get rid of helmets. We've got Davey Boy arguing with 100 churches that they should all stay in their lane because there's nothing moral about the ACT Party, is there, apart from its neoliberal dogma of austerity, deregulation and privatisation. That's their mantra and their code. So all you other people who are dogmatic, just like this guy Seymour, maybe you just get out of the way because he's in power now, and Luxon's not going to control his little lapdogs that are barking and yapping all around him and controlling the government. So more than ever, we actually need a change of government. This has got to be a one-term government, and because my wife Vicky has been made unemployed in these kind of conditions that the government will not take responsibility for, after it crashed and stalled construction, after it crashed the economy and drove it into the ditch, driving people overseas, after it's created exploding homelessness everywhere, ramped up unemployment all over the place, passed on surcharges to small retailers, and just made things so much harder for everybody that lives in this country to have a peaceful, normal life where we can just get along, get on, without all worrying about our incomes, our money, our future, etc. This government's got to go. It's a one-term government. So here at G News, I want to announce right now that we've started up a little shop, which is a merchandise shop where you can buy G News merchandise. This is just to help us. Today, the total number of donations that we received is 0. It's a 0 day for G News donations today. So in its place, let's give you something back. You can buy a G News one-term government t-shirt and a number of other things like cups and caps with G News on them. And this is because Vicky doesn't have any money coming in at the moment, and things are really tight, on 0 donations. So by all means, step on in and buy yourself a one-term government t-shirt, and let's make it a one-term government. This government's got to go. It's the worst government that many of us have seen in our entire lifetimes. Also tonight, I'm hoping to actually bring back the curious questions that we used to ask on G News. So look out for the curious questions, and I'll see you all again as soon as possible. And it's really good. We've got some major guests coming up. Look out tomorrow, where I have an interview with Jenny Anderson, and in the weekend we've got some more guests coming on, and next week, who are some of our opposition MPs who have decided to talk to G News, and we'll tell their stories here. That's all for today. Talk to you all again soon.
Welcome to G News, the good news.